Hello, everyone. Welcome to the sixth episode of the podcast. I'm here with Drew, my good friend from freshman year. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Drew Scheifer. We met each other in Unit 2, Urban Hall. I'm a sophomore studying economics. I'm originally from San Diego, and on campus, I'm involved with some business orgs. I'm in Delta Consulting, which is education technology consulting. I'm also the business lead for UAVs at Berkeley, and then I'm the team captain of an IM volleyball team as well.
Awesome. So we're going to dive into a little bit of what all that means and how your experience in college has been so far. My first question to you is, can you dive into a little bit of the business orgs that you're into?
Yeah, for sure. So I first joined Delta Consulting as a fall freshman, which had been freshman year last year, fall semester. And so Delta Consulting is an education technology consulting club. And so there's a lot of consulting clubs on Berkeley campus. They all work with private and public companies, as well as nonprofits, international government organizations, and all of those working to them solve their problems. So within Delta, that's mainly education companies. So you think you like Khan Academy, College Board, as well as companies like United Nations, and I had the chance to work with Adobe last semester. For me, it initially was with Noodle, which is an AI company out of New York. They're a startup, and they're trying to get roots in college campuses, see what students want out of AI tools. And then with Adobe, I was doing a lot of data analysis and working on their marketing side. And then now I'm a project manager working with Note. So Note is a competitor to Quizlet, and so I'm leading a project there, doing a lot of on-campus marketing. So if you're a Cal student, you might see us around campus throwing some fun activities. That's on the Delta side. As far as UAVs at Berkeley, I joined that as well in my fall freshman year. That was really exciting, starting the business team actually for UAVs at Berkeley. UAV means unmanned aerial vehicles. So if you ever played Call of Duty, it's that kind of UAV. It's a drone, and it flies itself autonomously. And so we do a lot of fundraising. I'm reaching out to companies like Boeing, Skydio, DJI, all of these drone and aerospace companies, trying to get sponsorships, get funding, get materials. And then recently, we were tabling at a career fair. It was Maker Fair up in Vallejo, and we were able to actually secure a 3D printer. I was talking to some of the co-founders of Prusa, and so I was able to get a 3D printer for the club that we've been really needing, Prusa XL. So that's just some of the stuff I've been doing there. Those are both a lot of fun.
Wow, awesome. So coming into college, did you already have the idea that you wanted to join these sort of orgs, or were you influenced by the people around you? How did that go?
That's a good question. So I had first heard about consulting orgs actually from my aunt. She had a coworker who was from Berkeley. He had gone to UC Berkeley, and she works at Disney now. And so she had mentioned how he brought up these consulting orgs on campus, and that was sort of my first hearing of them. And then in this first few weeks of fall freshman year, there's all of this club tabling on Sproul, and so you see a lot of these consulting clubs. And I thought, I'd heard about them. She'd mentioned how that was a really good opportunity to get work with businesses, which I completely agree. And so I thought I'd take my try at that. Specifically, Delta stood out to me because I'd done education work in high school. I started a charity in high school working with refugees in San Diego, and so I had done some of the work in that area. I had done a little bit of business in high school, but I had never done any sort of consulting. And so that was not something that was definitely on my radar before applying to schools. It wasn't even something I knew about really until I got here at Berkeley. As far as UAVs, I was interested in drones. I'd crashed a drone in high school or even middle school into a brick wall, and that was my experience with flying. But I've always been interested in sort of the tech side, the mechanical aspects, and so that stood out to me as well. But this wasn't really something I'd seen going into college. I kind of came in with a blank slate. I'm studying economics. I'm not in the business school. I'll probably apply to that later this year, end of sophomore year. But currently, I'm sort of on the business side of economics, and that's not really something I even thought about doing before getting here. Yeah.
And so do you think it was easy to sort of find community in these clubs, or do you have to find community outside of them?
Yeah, I think clubs in large part serve to build community. That's how a lot of my friends have been made. But then I also have plenty of friends from outside of that, in the dorms, meeting people on our floor, as well as, in these first few weeks doing GBO, so going out and doing our orientation. That was a big part of finding friends for me, absolutely. And a lot of those friends I live with to this day. I'm roommates with a guy from my floor, and then Griffin, the floor above as well. So there's definitely friendships to be made in clubs. A lot of these clubs hold very fun events, going on parties, traveling a lot. So that's definitely a big element of it. And that's definitely an avenue to make friends, and that's where I've found a lot of my current friends as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so the Berkeley consulting culture is known as being like super competitive.
Mm.
So how did you prepare yourself to stand out amongst like the huge like applicant pool?
Yeah, no, I think it's very important that you find sort of your own why.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you actually want to be in a consulting club? Like I mentioned that I had done some education experience beforehand, so being able to differentiate yourself as an applicant in terms of your prior experiences and how those align.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a specific niche to the club you're applying to. The biggest part though is going out to the events that they hold. So all of these consulting clubs, they overlap their like info sessions on the same days and the same times. And so, you know, if you have your top one or two, then make sure you make it up to their events. Go to tabling, do coffee chats. Showing involvement is a large part of the recruiting process, and I think that's pretty constant across a lot of the consulting clubs. And then beyond that, just trying to be genuine. You know, being yourself is what we look for when we're trying to find new people to join the club. You know, don't try to put on the personality of somebody you think that we're trying to, you know, recruit. Because truthfully, you know, we like people who are interesting and capable and also engaged. So if you show that you truly are interested and you prove that by going to the events, and then you also show your own personality, those are sort of the two big criteria that I would recommend.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so being a part of so many things, how do you find the time to balance it, and how do you find the time like for yourself? Like, do you do anything for yourself, like to take care of your mental health?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a challenge and something that I'm trying to work towards more this year. I think freshman year I was really pushing myself a lot, and so I've tried to tone my classwork back a little bit this year. I'm taking some lighter courses, some interesting classes that are more so in line with what I need to take for breadth requirements as well as my major classes, but trying to scale that back. And then on the club side, I am involved in volleyball. I'm an intramural volleyball team that I joined last spring, and then I got the team going again for this fall. And so having those avenues where you're doing things just for your own enjoyment, I think is very important. Because for me, a lot of my time outside of class is spent on these sort of like business and professional focused clubs, but being able to have, you know, Monday nights, I'm going out playing volleyball. I've got a match tonight, 10 p.m. My team is That's What She Said. And so, you know, trying to find space for yourself to do that. It doesn't have to be a sport. It can be playing D&D with your friends. I brought a lot of board games with me up to school. So, you know, giving yourself that space to do things that are truly enjoyable just for the sake of enjoyment, I think is a big part. Yeah.
And for people that sort of have trouble putting themselves out there, what are some tips and advice that you can give to so that sort of they can boost their own confidence and be able to have conversations with strangers and meet new people?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a challenge, and it's not always something that comes naturally. I think talking to people is a skill and can be learned just like anything else. And so really the best thing to do is to do it. So going out, consistently stepping outside of your comfort zone, and you know, for me, going in with the thought that like it may not work out. You know, you may apply to a club and it might not come through as you want it to. But if you put in the effort and then you really do your best just to put yourself out there, that is practice for the next time. And so in terms of specifically talking to the people, I try my best when, you know, let's say you're walking past and you see someone's hat and you like it. You know, I'm from San Diego, I'm a Padres fan. If someone's wearing a Padres hat, I'll tell them like, oh, go Padres. And, you know, try to start those sort of easy, small talk conversations. I say easy, that can be a very difficult thing to do. But pushing yourself to do those things, kind of working that muscle is helpful for me at least. Yeah.
Awesome. So, as we all know, some people say and think that the job market is cooked right now. So what are you doing right now to prepare for like your entrance into the job market in the future?
That's a good question. And I think there's validity to that. I agree. I think the job market right now is very challenging. Like there are some larger macroeconomic trends that are, you know, in a negative direction, like recruiting, sort of you're in like a period where there's low hire, low fire, which means it's very difficult to find these entry-level positions as companies are kind of just staying put with a lot of uneasiness from tariffs and stuff. I know you're not asking me for a macroeconomic analysis, but in terms of what I've been doing to try and get those positions, I will say involvement is the biggest thing. So showing leadership positions in whatever you are truly interested in. So for me, I've been fortunate enough to be able to get involved in these on-campus business clubs, but that's not the only way to get professional or leadership experience. So let's say I don't know, you really like ultimate frisbee, being able to take that step and become a team captain, or even if it's something as simple as like joining a game club, doing something that you really do enjoy, and taking the next step to taking more of a leadership role, starting something of your own. A lot of companies are looking for sort of like that self-starter position. And then, for me, a big anxiety of mine is applying to jobs. Like that is something that is challenging to start doing, because I think there's a lot of like internal fear about, like where is that going to go? Will it work out? And the biggest thing you can do is just to do it. Just apply to jobs. It's a lot less challenging than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be like college essays for every single application, but it's not quite like that. So looking for roles, broadening your, interests, and saying like, okay, I guess I could try marketing, even though it's not quite in line with what I've been doing. So casting a wide net and just doing it, honestly. It kind of is a number game at this point. So the more you send out, the more likely you get to get some traction. Yeah.
And so taking the step back, for high schoolers out there that are applying to colleges, how would you say it's similar to the job search, but in the sense that, this sense it's you gotta like sell yourself in these PIQs and all that. So if what tips and tricks do you have for them, and like what did you use for yourself? If you want to talk about that.
That's a good question. And I think a big part of it is that college applications are a great way to differentiate yourself. So, I had talked to some friends, and I think I talked to like an on-campus counselor, and sort of the recommendation I got was like to not talk about sports as sort of like a high level. Of course, there are specifics to that. Generally, how I thought about it, my point of view, and I'm like, I didn't apply to a whole bunch of Ivies. I applied pretty much in California, but typically, think about, let's say you're talking about the wrestling team. I wrestled a little bit in high school, and I did have an essay about wrestling, despite the recommendations of my advisor. And sort of the approach I took was, okay, how is my essay different from all of the other kids in my high school who wrestled, all the other high schoolers who wrestled around the US? I mean, that's millions, right? There has to be something unique about your personality, and sort of your experience is the vehicle to show that. So your essay is not just another way to list out what you did, because they have your resume. They know what you were involved in. For me, I wrote about wrestling in my PIQ for the Common App. And so it's like the 750 word. And I talked about how the essay was about how I stopped wrestling and learning that, wrestling was not quite the sport for me, because I actually struggled a lot after standing in line next to the guy that I was going to wrestle. I became friends with him. I've always been a very talkative person, so start chatting with him, and then 5 minutes later you're there, wrestling on the ground, nearly fighting, and that sort of disconnect between making that friend and then immediately sort of betraying that friendship in a way. I struggled to separate that, and ultimately I decided to stop wrestling, and I joined the beach volleyball team instead. And so it was a story about like learning my own strengths, that I prefer like lifting others up. There's a lot of like physicality metaphors, because of course wrestling is a very physical sport. And so instead of tearing people down, I preferred lifting them up. That was the overarching storyline, and that was, telling about my own personality. I like talking to people. I like working together in teams. Those are sort of the messages I want to give. And really the vehicle for that was my pathway through wrestling. And that story is unique to me, right? None of the other guys on my team, and maybe even other people around the US or around the world, that had similar experiences, but it was my own personality that really showed through. And I think that's the important thing to highlight. Yeah.
Awesome. And so it sounds like everything that you're involved in sort of revolves around your passion, and you haven't lost that yet.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I've tried to stay passionate, and I think a big part of that is doing things you're truly interested in. Like in high school, I did not have that sort of senioritis that I know many people experience. I think because I truly was interested in the class that I was taking. And so being able to keep that passion, I think, stems from, again, giving yourself time to do things that you truly enjoy, and being present in everything that you're involved in.
So I was gonna ask, and because I know that I had someone on the podcast before talking about how when they were younger, they sort of had time to think and look in the bigger picture, but then in college they start focusing more on the day to day, and then that sort of consumes all their time. So it's great to hear that you actually are taking the time to step back and think oh, is this what I actually want to do?
Yeah. No, I think that's a big part. Like, especially, you know, college is largely a vehicle for employment. Like, the goal to go to college is to get a job. And I think many people get caught up in just that part, just getting the job, just getting the biggest salary. I know, like, I've seen that a lot, even in these business clubs. Like, a lot of people are interested in, you know, working in investment banking or sort of the highest ticket industries, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think for me, it's more so been a look into like what is going to make me happy, and you know, whether that means taking a lower salary for more work-life balance, whatever that might mean to you, or doing work at a company that you truly align with their mission, rather than, you know, a FAANG company that you like the money more so. And so, you know, being cognizant of the choices that you make in college and in high school do, you know, cascade into what you end up doing for the rest of your life. And so being intentional with your choices, and, you know, whether that means choosing what clubs to join, what jobs to apply to, what job to accept if you end up wanting to pursue an internship, I think being very thoughtful about that into something that you truly are passionate about, the same way you talk about, you know, doing clubs that you're interested in, I think that is really important, because you know, 20 years from now, you're not going to remember really what it was like applying to the jobs, but you'll remember the experience of working for Wells Fargo for the last 20 years versus working for UNICEF, for instance. And different people prefer different things. So really thinking to yourself what you want out of it, not what other people tell you that you should do, parents, friends, just the culture of where you're at. I think there's a lot told to us, especially at Berkeley, in terms of where we should or could go. And so thinking truly about what you really want for yourself is, I think, the most important.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful, because people get scared of the idea that I have to like decide what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life now, and I don't have like all that, you know, insight. So I think being able to talk about it and being able to be kind of vulnerable in the way that we're thinking for people that are coming before us, I think that's like we, you know, they're gonna learn a lot from you.
Yeah, I hope so. And like, you even hear it from like proper adults. I mean, we're adults, but not truly. And so you hear from people in their 40s, 50s that they still are trying to figure out what they want to do when they're older. Like, you are not choosing right now what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Your major doesn't determine that. Your clubs, even your first job, those don't determine those things, because ultimately you have a choice in terms of what you decide to do. So don't let that paralyze you from ever making a choice. You know, it's okay to make the wrong decision, and it's almost as valuable to take an internship and learn that you hate working in the field for biology or in a lab than it is to take an internship where you learn that you love it, because you know, carving out your interests and between what you do in your classes and what it looks like in the real world can often be very disparate things. So really just allowing yourself to experiment and to fail and to make those decisions truly for yourself is the biggest part for me.
I totally agree, because I feel like right now we're in that age where, you know, we're basically free. Like we can make mistakes, and we could just go out there and like try and learn and all that. So I think definitely, like, you know, we can play it safe, but also like, you know, take some risks and be able to just, you know, try out things that you normally, that it's like not the, you know, the path that people would normally follow. And so I guess just kind of changing gears a little bit. How is it like, you know, Berkeley has sort of a housing crisis and all that, so how was it like applying to housing and all that?
But yeah, I mean, the biggest advice I would give is start early. Me and my roommates started looking in November, which is very early, and we ended up finding a place where, you know, I'm living very close to campus right now, at a place called The Hub. It's very expensive, so, you know, whether or not the right choice is made, I don't know, but I will be studying abroad in the spring, and so it was important for me to find a housing that, you know, fits with what my roommates want, because half the year I won't be there. So that was a big part of the decision ultimately. And so, yeah, I mean, location is very important. I know I go to all my classes, and so being close helps a lot. If you don't go to so many classes, it's not maybe as big of a deal. But, you know, ultimately you get more choices and a lot more time when you start early. And some places, like, give you better discounts if you start really early. Occasionally you can get cheap rooms if you start really late. You're like last minute, a place is trying to get out some rooms, but I wouldn't recommend that as much, because there's also a chance that that's not happening at all, and then you're sort of getting screwed. So start early. That's all I'll say.
And so, how was it like taking the leap to like study abroad? Like,
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I have wanted to study abroad. That was something that I had definitely been thinking about going into college. It wasn't like a big, something I was very, decided to do. It was sort of formed once I got here. But I'm going with my boyfriend from Riverside. He's at UCR. I'm at Berkeley, and so we're going to go to the same program through UCAP. It's a UC system-wide study abroad program, and so I'm really looking forward to it. Denmark, in specific, we wanted to go to Northern Europe, and then I looked around to see where we could live together. And Aarhus University in Aarhus, which is the second largest city in Denmark, which I didn't know, was they let us room together, and so I'll be spending all spring there. It goes from like January 16th all the way to June 30th. So a very long program because typically we're done like May. So I'll be like an extra month and a half in Europe. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Yeah, absolutely.
awesome. So with studying abroad, how do you how does it work when like with your club commitments and all that? Like, are you still doing that like online, or do you take like a pause? Or
Yeah, so for me, particularly because Denmark, the time change is pretty stark. I'm just completely taking a hiatus from the clubs, and it's pretty typical, I think. So it was not a big issue. Most people in the clubs like, oh, really cool. Where are you going? Not so much like, oh, how are we going to do this while you're gone? So for me, it wasn't a big deal to take a hiatus, and I will be gone for like the full semester, and I don't think that'll be an issue. I will say in terms of recruiting for internships, that is a challenge because particularly with my program length ending in June 30th, almost July, a lot of internships start in August, or sorry, not August. They end in August, but a lot of them start in May or early June, and so being able to find a position where I can start basically 1st of July, and then July to August is a pretty tight window. So that is a challenge, something to consider, as well as if you decide to study in the fall, making sure that your program doesn't extend into the next semester. You'd have to like take your finals and then come back here. That way you can still begin the next year when you'll be back on campus. So there are definitely some logistical things to consider. There's a lot of paperwork when you apply. I'll tell you, like, I'm getting a visa right now to study in Denmark. But typically they sort of hold your hand through that, and it's a relatively straightforward process if a good amount of work. I think when you remember, though, back 15 years from now, you're not going to remember the paperwork, though. You're going to remember the experiences and the fun stuff. So I think that's definitely a worthwhile trade-off to make.
And so, are you like learning the language?
No, I should be learning some Danish, but they speak a pretty good amount of English there, and so I'm just hoping to get by. No, I've been thinking about that, like getting Duolingo just to learn some fundamental phrases, because I don't really know any.
It would probably pick some up over there.
Hopefully, yeah, I don't know.
So kind of doubling back, I want to touch upon the UAV program that you're in. Like, that sounds awesome, and I want to hear like a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So UAVs at Berkeley is very cool. They're an engineering club centered around unmanned aerial vehicles, so again, autonomous drones. And they're a really neat engineering club in that they're sort of like a Blue Heart club, and so they accept all valid applicants. So if you join our Discord server and say, hey, I'd love to get involved, we have a little onboarding program called Ground School, where all of the new members, whether or not you're from an engineering background, where you'll work in a small group to design and build your own drone, and then you actually get to assemble that and fly it. And if you stick through that, you've learned the skills that you need, and then you can go work on a competition drone. And so we're a very open club. I'm an econ student, but I originally applied with the intent to join the mechanical program, working on the airframe. I didn't end up doing that because I started the business team instead, but we have plenty of people who do engineering and business, just business, or a mix between the different disciplines on the engineering side. We have like an electrical team, an airframe team, which does like the actual carbon fiber layout of the drone, and then we have, payload was also sort of like on the robotic side. I believe they got absorbed into airframe, and then finally we have software, because the drone flies itself and it has computer vision on board, and so there's a lot of software on the back end there. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it, and I love that it's a very accessible club to be a part of. That's sort of one of the instances where if you want business experience, it doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of a business organization. There are often a lot of these non-business clubs, like engineering clubs, sports, dance, whatever, where they have business sides, whether that be finance, planning, sponsorships, and so you can get that leadership, wherever you find it most interesting.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so, how does the business part of the club tie into the competition part?
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, the business team is largely in charge of getting the funding to build these drones because they're expensive. Our current hexacopter is like a 6-foot wingspan, a very large drone, and it costed about $30,000, maybe more. And so, a big part of us on the business team is going out, reaching out to these companies, organizing, sponsorships where they'll maybe come into campus. We'll talk with some of the recruiters, give them a resume book, and then they'll give us some money in exchange, and we'll put like the Boeing logo on our drone or on our website. And so it's really on the marketing and sponsorship side, sort of touching on the marketing. We are the people who put out the Instagram posts and who look at the LinkedIn and who, decide where and how we can like fly the drone on campus during Calapalooza, for instance. So that's a big part of it. And then just sort of partnerships as a whole, trying to get things organized. I've held a couple meetings with people interested in, doing research projects with the club, interested in sponsoring us, and so you're really doing whatever you like on all avenues of the business side. Yeah.
Is there a lot of traveling involved, like going to these competitions, or is it mainly like on campus?
No, there are a lot of competitions around the U.S. So our main competition is, SUAS, Student Unmanned Aerial Systems competition. That's held by RoboNation in Virginia, and then they just moved it to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then there's some in Alabama. There's some down in SoCal or in LA, like Cal State LA. There's some in, I want to say it's Wisconsin. So there's a lot of flying involved. Typically, that's mostly the engineers going because like the business team doesn't have to go to the competitions to be part of the on the ground team. But if you're interested in that, then I'm sure you can ask and join them there. So I haven't gone on any of the trips, but yes, there's a good bit of traveling there. Yeah.
I mean, it'd be like, maybe a good idea to send like someone like for the marketing, like to take pictures and all that.
Absolutely, yeah. No, typically one of the like Eric, he's the engineering lead for Airframe, and then he's also on the business side, and so he'll do a lot of the videography and media while they're out there, and then of course he also plays an instrumental role on the engineering side. So you have a lot of overlap there. It's a pretty multidisciplinary club. Yeah.
Nice. And so you touched upon LinkedIn, and I know Berkeley has a culture as being known as like LinkedIn warriors and all that.
Yeah.
So do you find LinkedIn like useful?
I've found it to be useful. I mean, mainly it's good if you're trying to like find a recruiter, for instance, or just look into like the details of somebody else. Not so much for job applications, although I would check there over maybe Handshake, because like a lot of companies will post jobs on LinkedIn, but typically you want to go to the actual website for the company in terms of applying to jobs. I'm not a huge like LinkedIn poster, but trying to get like all of your experiences on there, just have a public facing sort of profile that looks nice and is well formatted, I think is an important part, because if an employer is trying to find you for whatever reason, or you're at a career fair and you want to connect with a prospective recruiter, then having that sort of public facing professional interface is really important. So I would build a LinkedIn. It shouldn't be too much time. A nice photo, maybe you have the banner be like a nice photo from the school as well. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's like instrumental to my life.
And so, kind of talking about more like the social stuff, like what do you do for fun?
Yeah, I mean, I do love playing beach volleyball. I've been getting into a lot more rock climbing lately as well. When I have a chance, I'll try to play some games. A lot of Minecraft, getting back into that from my childhood. And then just, making the time to hang out with friends. And so whether that be cooking or going on a little trip to San Francisco, trying to think what else, volleyball as well. So indoor volleyball, I have the IM team there. That's truly just like an enjoyable, fun event for me. And then beach volleyball, just with friends. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other big activities I do, but ultimately it's sort of just trying to make that time and that space to do fun, interesting things, whether that be personal interests or just exploring around.
Awesome. And one last question from me, like what would you tell a younger version of yourself like watching this?
I would say, I mean, I feel like it all went well, and it's easy to say with hindsight, but truthfully, sticking to doing what you love and doing it because you like it, I mean, I'm still young, and we're still have a lot of experiences and failures in life ahead of us. But I think as a guiding light or North Star, just being able to stick to the things that you're truly interested in is maybe a good way to live a fulfilling life. Because I think success is not just about, money, but more so about happiness. And I think a lot of that happiness comes from living a fulfilling and interesting and engaging life. And so doing what you are interested, what you love, is truly the ultimate way to get that. And so, get involved, put yourself out there. It can be scary, it can be stressful, but if you're doing something that you truly enjoy, then it's absolutely worth it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Cool.
for taking the time to be
Absolutely.
in
Thanks
for
for
the
having me.
podcast.
It's a lot of fun.
See you guys.
See ya.